warm welcome to all of you. First and foremost, of course, dear alumni. We're very happy, I say this on behalf of Helmut and also on Hendrik Enderlein, to welcome you here, to have you here. You will be many more than what you are right now. About 170, more or less, of you are here within the next 2 and 3 days. So do take the chance to reconnect. We're very happy to have you here. We're especially very happy to have so many international students here. About 1/3, Sasha gave me the right numbers, is coming from abroad and far from abroad. And thank you very much also to the DAAD again for financing the pre-union workshop on digital leadership, which some of you, 28 I think it is, have had during the last days. For us, it's very important to have you here and to reconnect with you. And you'll see in the coming years that it's even a growing topic for us, meaning also for Hendrik and for the whole school leadership and the professors for us. You are great role models for us, for especially our current students. You can offer practical support. You can also offer academic input, I think, because you are the ones who are really at the forefront of where political things are moving right now, as far as if you're in public policy, and maybe even challenge our academia, our faculty, in certain aspects when you keep discussing with them. And of course, you're also very important for our role models for our students regarding your careers, and we'll come to that a bit later. And last but not least, you're our international ambassadors. You know that Hertie School has about 1/3 of German students who are coming from Germany, 1/3 from Europe, 1/3 from international. This especially North and South America. Internationally, not so strong Asia and Africa yet. And we would like to get even more in touch with you, talk about chapters and coffee chats and other things when we talk about internationalizing constantly our school regarding students. Maintaining good communication channels is for us, of course, very important. It's a task we have to deliver. And so I just want to give you, since I do have only a few minutes, a very, very brief 2-3 ideas what has happened. You know that incoming President Enderlein's presidency strategy, you know of that. It's all been sent to you. I'm not going to repeat it right now. Just going to tell you we're working already on realizing some of the first aspects. For example, you will find, if you look out on the web, 6 calls for new professorships, 6. That is quite a lot for a faculty at the moment of 27. And there will be another 5 to 6 coming this autumn probably. If you add this all up, it's quite an increase. We are right now in the creation of the first 2 centers, the first center on Europe and the other center on security, which will pick up their work or continue the work, Jacques Delors Institute, partly in September this year. We are right now renting an additional 1,000 square meters right here, very close to us, Friedrichstraße 194, 3 minutes from here. So there is a lot of movement going on, a lot of new staff is coming, etc. Important for you is career development, formerly known as Career Services, has doubled its capacity. I think Stephanie is here. She might stand up for a minute. There she is, Stephanie Eisenecher, colleague of Anna von Beer. We are developing, or we have developed actually, the Hertie Career Development Roadmap, which is, of course, firstly aimed at the first and second year master students, but will also be having a lot to do with you as alumni if you want to come back and get some consulting on your career development. We are working on and it's still a working title, please excuse the maybe not very innovative name, Hertie Alumni Strategy 2.0, meaning we set up on the present state of alumni relations. And this is especially Maria, Anna, Sasha, and I have worked since 1 year now intensely together with some of you, especially intensely with some of your chapter heads and chapter leaders. And we would very much like to reflect in these days where we stand today and where we should be going to. And we don't want to be going to somewhere you're not interested in, because we want to be going with you somewhere, literally speaking. And we want to know and discuss how best to develop our Hertie alumni network. When I look, for example, at Henley School or at Warwick, which are ranked very highly in the Economist alumni ranking, we talk about 70,000 alumni or 50,000 alumni in 93 countries, etc., etc. There are some good aspects to it, but of course there are business schools, etc. But we want to develop our best of it. And this will probably take us another, I guess, half a year. We're getting close to it, but this is something I very much expect from these 3 days, and we will have time to discuss, especially tomorrow and Sunday, these aspects. Where do you think we should be going together? What is our part? What might be your part in it? In the end, it's your network. A little bit ours, but especially, first and foremost, yours. Now, I'm very much looking forward to the coming 3 days. Today, you have enjoyed the master classes of Lukas, Andrea, and Baisch, I think it was. The upcoming alumni panel will be coming here soon. And before we do that, we have the Alumni Awards. Andrea will start with that. Tonight, the alumni dinner. I don't have to repeat now what Saturday is coming. You all have the program probably. And on Sunday, we'll have the traditional brunch, and there we can have a wrap up and discuss further issues. Now I want to clean the floor for Andrea to hand over the first award. Thank you.
Axel, thank you very much. Also from my behalf, a very warm welcome. Great having you back at the school. I think it's always fantastic, sort of, seeing everybody again. It's like a little, for me at least, it's like a little bit of a family reunion. And I already had the pleasure this morning of working with some of you on the, or in the Foresight workshop on the dawn of digital democracy, which was truly inspiring for me. So, Axel, thank you very much for cutting the speech a little bit short. The reason why I've asked Axel to do that is that our award winner has to leave early, and I just want to make sure that he or she actually is in the room while we hand out our first executive training award. Now, let me give you a little bit of a background about this award. It's an award we've been discussing and developing in the executive education unit. And as you know, one of our primary objectives is to facilitate dialogue with alumni, listen to your ideas, and especially to your learnings, to your practical experiences. And, that's also something Axel has already stretched. You have grown into, true professionals. You have taken up demanding positions, faced challenges at work, and gained valuable experience. And as we all know, professional success and lifelong learning are closely linked. And that's one of the reasons why we thought, an executive training award would be something we would give back to you, but it's also something where we then can learn again from you. And that's the idea behind this prize. So the winning proposal will be realized as a one-day executive training workshop for the very institution, organization the alumni or the alumnus is employed in. So it's a one-day tailor-made workshop for your needs and for your desires. And the author of the winning proposal, that's the second part of the prize, as well as the second and third prize winner, will be invited to attend a course from the Hertie School's open enrollment portfolio free of charge. So when we sort of spelled out the prize, the outcome was that we really received a variety and extremely interesting portfolio of well-elaborated proposals, and it was, a true pleasure to go through all of them and to also see what you are working on currently, what your challenges are. And participants showed clear analysis of the challenges their organizations are facing. Now, the jury was composed of Hertie School faculty and executive education staff, and the criteria were the relevance and value for the institution, the professional development for participants, and of course the innovative and the creativity part. So let me come to the three winners and start with the third prize, which actually I'm very proud of, goes to a former MPP student of mine who also wrote the master thesis with me. It's Amy Austin from the US-UK Fulbright Commission. Amy is not here today, but will be with us tomorrow, and I'm happy to catch up with her then. The second prize goes to Ulrike Friedrich from the Umweltbundesamt. Ulrike unfortunately cannot be with us today, but she sends her regards. And the first prize goes to Andreas Pawelke from the Open Knowledge Foundation in Germany. Creative advocacy, influencing policy on a shoestring budget. And that was a proposal that really convinced us. And we are very much looking forward to doing a workshop together with you, Andreas. Yeah. So thank you very much and congratulations for winning our first-time executive training award. I can't sort of give you a certificate or anything now because the prize actually is a full day with us. And we're very much looking forward to seeing you and actually on working together with you on making this one day happen. You have to take a picture. We need a photo. Yeah. Yeah. So, Sasha, du bist mit auf. That's for you. Thank you. Yes.
Now, I do have a certificate. I see. We now come to the Alumni Achievement Award. Great honor to do this. Last year it was Camilo Sanchez. If I remember correctly, he wasn't here. He sent us greetings from Latin America, from Bogota. And just by chance, we met him when we is now, Anna Maria and I, and others, and had a chapter meeting, a big chapter meeting and a DAD workshop in Bogota. It was very interesting to hear in his country, in his surrounding, and to see his work, also the acknowledgement of his work. And as it just happens to be, this year's winner of the Alumni Achievement Award will also be visited by us in autumn when we open another chapter. It's just by chance. And since you all know who it is, I may say it because it's written in the program here. But before I say this, I just for everybody who's not knowing it, it has to be an outstanding member of the Alumni School network. The purpose of the award is to honor alumni's outstanding accomplishments in public policy or public management over the past year. And the honoree must have demonstrated an innovative and dedicated commitment to the principles of good governance and must be celebrated, have been celebrated for their outstanding contribution to our field. Now, they told me, I was not involved in the decision here, that the decision was extremely difficult since we had many outstanding nominations. However, at the top of all those nominations and discussions were that Monica Wills, where is she? There she is. Monica Wills received the award. Just come up a minute. We do it later. Just maybe you just come up a bit that the colleagues see you. Maybe not everybody knows you, a lot of them know. And I will tell you a little bit about her, which you don't know yet.
Okay.
Monica Wills has been working since 2015 at the Behavioral Insights team focusing international development, home affairs and security. And when you came to Bogota, I think you came out of that position, is that correctly? When you very shortly, she was in our, unfortunately only maybe I think 2 hours or something, you came to us. You came very late. But did you come out of that position or did you, because it says here since November 17 she changed, she's a senior advisor.
So I was an associate advisor when I joined 3 years ago, and then I was promoted to advisor and then to senior advisor last year.
Okay, but you came out of London to us. And did you have something to do in Bogota at that moment? Or did you just come to the...
So before I came to Hertie, I was in Bogota. I was there for 2 years working on a think tank on public policy. And I'm actually part of the panel, so I'll tell you all of this in a minute.
Yeah.
And then I came to Hertie and then I went straight to London after Hertie.
That's what she is. So she has worked at the highest levels in very many foreign governments and international organizations, including World Bank, Inter-American Development, President's Office, and the Ministry of Finance in Mexico, and the Ministry of Education in Peru, National Planning Department, and President's Office in Colombia. as well as the Cabinet Office, Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and Police Forces in the UK. It's quite a thing, actually. I mean, looking at you, you're not so senior. But Monica's work has been externally recognized by several academic and practitioner leaders across public policy as pushing boundaries in terms of the appellation of leading-edge behavioral science to increasingly complex public challenges, including recidivism. You probably explain that to us later. Anti-corruption, especially Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina, and peace-building, obviously, in Colombia. From our point of view, Monica's story represents really the strong foundation of using evidence-based approaches and developing intersectoral partnerships to improve public policy outcomes. We will get much more insights into your work in a minute when you start and be part of our panel discussion, Do-morrow. The title coming out of your alumni circle here. We love the title very much, Do-morrow. Visionaries hacking the system and shaping tomorrow. And not only, that's the last thing, and I'm allowed to say it here, I ask you before that, not only Monica's professional achievements represent a model of Hertie career, but also the developments, I may call it like this, in her personal life, give another idea of the hashtag Hertie love, since she will get married to Sharat Sharma, who's also an alumnus of the Hertie School. And this will also happen this autumn. So thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I might give you, now we need flowers. First of all, I'll give you the certificate. Very proud. Does Sasha come around?
Oh, sorry.
Like this. Here we go. Is that okay? Hopefully, that's great. That's good. You say so? Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, it's for me to open the floor to the discussion. Enjoy the next 2.5 days. There'll be a lot of partying, a lot of discussion, and hopefully a lot of insights for you and also for us in order to further develop your and our network. Thank you very much. Sasha, now it's your turn.
Okay. Thank you, Axel and Andrea. Congratulations also to the 2 award winners, one of whom is on our panel, which is really exciting. We now transition to our alumni panel, and if I could ask the 4 panelists please to join me now on stage. So hello, I'm Sasha Heller. I'm an alumnus of the Hertie School from the MPP class of 2013. I continue to live in Berlin and work freelance as a researcher, facilitator, and editor, as well as part-time for Social Impact, which is a nonprofit here in Germany that supports startups and helps them solve societal challenges in an entrepreneurial way. Over the next 90 minutes, you'll hear from and have a chance to discuss with 4 entrepreneurial Hertie School alumni. Each will share how they are disrupting existing structures and systems as they seek to bring our society further. You'll have the opportunity to ask them about their experiences, the highs, the lows, the successes, the failures, and what they've learned along the way. First, each of the panelists will briefly present their story. We'll follow this with a discussion among the panelists, and then bring in your own questions. So let's begin. Our first presenter is Farooq Cheung. He's CEO and co-founder of Politia. Farooq graduated from the Hertie School with an MPP in 2016. He has worked for nonprofit, public, and private sector organizations. His current venture, Politia, is a tech startup enabling city leaders with data-powered governance solutions. Before joining Politia, he was a policy advisor to the CDU, responsible for national-level policies affecting German cities and municipalities. Farooq.
Thank you. So, of course, we're doing business to government, so we're not hacking anything. We're integrating, and so I'm distancing from that term. But actually, my story starts in Moabit. This is not far from here. You might have lived there during your time here at Hertie. And now it's a very fancy neighborhood, a lot of cafes, a lot of families. But back in the days, it was a tough neighborhood. So it was basically famous for 2 things. It's jail and failing students. And when I was a student, 2006, we had a Berlin-wide reform. And you know, when you grow up there, you think, okay, this is something you're detached to, but in Berlin, they introduced a mandatory test, so to pass to the A-level for the first time ever, after the PISA studies showed that Germany is not in that best shape in the education system. And 85% of my class dropped out in that year. And this, in that year, was not very an event to me. But when I did my A-level, I was starting to think, why did that happen? Why did they drop out? Why did they have to? What is with them? What are they doing now? I haven't met a lot of them after that. And so I thought deeply about the school system and began my interest in public policy. And after thinking about schools, I studied education, dived deep into the topic and empirical research, just to realize that schools, like kindergartens, like police stations, fire departments, are part of a bigger system, a very complex system, cities. And I focused more on the layer, urban policy in general. Here at Hertie, I did a lot of papers on that. I wrote my master thesis about smart cities, how technology can help to make city services better, so to improve citizens' lives. After graduating, I met a woman. You might know her. And I got the offer for the CDU to do their urban policy as in the strategy department. I took that offer, and I did that 1.5 years in this building, actually. And writing speeches, writing policy papers as typical, but mostly what I really took from that was the network. So met a lot of mayors, high-level representatives of municipal associations. I enjoyed that, but still, it was far away from what I left, cities. It was far away, federal level, local level, that's a big gap. And I wanted to do something more groundwork, more close to the city, so I had basically 2 options: work for a city or do some business with cities. And I did business with cities. So I stumbled basically incidentally into an investor. He did a fintech 2 years ago, an exit, made some money, and was looking for someone from the policy field to push a venture that is making cities' decision-making better. And I took that opportunity in January, joined Politea as CEO and co-founder. We have 3 people now working here in Berlin, mostly with cities around Berlin to test with them. And in that talks with the cities, we realized there's a big problem in Germany. You have a lot of data. So cities collect a lot of data about themselves. But this data is locked in silos. So it's not connected. It's not available for their decision making. And that's what we want to do. We want to connect the data on a platform and basically provide a governance platform for mayors, treasurers, heads of administrations. Just to give an example, this is how a main screen looks for childcare education. We integrate population data from the registry. We integrate budget data from the budget software and the HR software. And then, for example, depict how the population of certain age groups evolved over time, how they might evolve in the next 2 years, show the capacity. Will it reach a certain threshold? Will it be oversized, for example? Do I have to act? Will it be expensive? Do I have to extend the budget? All automatically at your fingertip as a mayor. Yeah, this is what we do now. We do it together with the city, so we go there and develop together with them. It's a nice challenge, and yeah, that's what I'm doing now, and I'm looking forward to discuss with you and answer your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Farooq. We'll now hear from Monica Will Silva, Senior Advisor at the Behavioral Insights team. You've already heard a bit about her. I'll quickly just summarize. BIT is a social purpose company partly owned by the UK government with the purpose of applying insights from the behavioral sciences to public policy. Monica has worked for them for about 3.5 years. Her current focus is on applying behavioral insights to public policy in Latin America in the policy areas ranging from maternal health, in teacher absenteeism to crime prevention, anti-corruption, and peace building. She graduated from the Hertie School with an MPP in 2014. Monica.
Thank you. don't have much to say after all of those introductions, but I'll try to say something new. So yeah, I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of context of what is it that I do and what are behavioral insights. Basically, behavioral insights is a concept that we use to refer to a number of disciplines, including behavioral economics, social psychology, and cognitive psychology. And if someone were to ask me to describe this in 2 sentences, what I would say is, or like what we do in 2 sentences, is incorporating a more realistic model of human behavior into policy design and using this like wealth of knowledge from the behavioral sciences to improve policies and their outcomes. An important part of what we do is also evaluate rigorously. So we run randomized controlled trials and we run experiments. And the team was set up initially in the Prime Minister's office in 2010, in number 10, Downing Street. The coalition government back then was being advised by Richard Taylor, who's the latest Nobel Prize in economics winner. And about 4 years ago, we spun out of government and we became a public-private organization. So that allows us to work internationally. When I joined 3.5 years ago, so we started in London, then grew, and from 4 years ago to now, we were about 25 when I joined. We're 160 now, and we are working all over the world and have opened up 4 offices roughly in London, Sydney, New York, and Singapore. And I want to go back to tell you why I got interested in all of this in the first place and why behavioral sciences mean so much to me. I grew up in Bogota in the 90s. That was one of the most violent periods of our recent history, and Bogota was one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Citizens then were terrified, they were distrustful, they didn't really know what they could rely on at that point. And here comes this mayor with a very alternative view as to how policies should be done. And he did a couple of things. I'll just give you 2 examples. One of them is those cards on the right. And the thing that he did with those cards is he gave them to drivers to give each other feedback. And I was about 7 years old when he did this. And I remember being in my mom's car with the cards and just playing around, showing them to everyone, like just very excited about the whole thing. And same with the mimes. So he contracted mimes as traffic officers because he realized that Bogotanians were terrified of making a fool out of themselves in public. And then the mimes would like follow people around when they were doing something wrong. So I saw this like behavior change, and you kind of know where I'm going to with this, while I was growing up. And I saw how like people started respecting each other, how they were like behaving in a better way just through these alternative policy approaches. I had never really thought about it in terms of like something I wanted to pursue or like something I wanted to do with my life. But then I came to Hertie and I took a course here called Governing by Ideas that back then was taught by Klaus Offe and Professor Kai Beckrich. And in that course, we saw MOCUs as one of the examples that we were studying to like a policy, alternative policy approach. And it just clicked in my head. It's like, this is what I have to do with my life. And then in one of the other courses, we also saw the behavioral insights team as one example. And then it was love at first sight, basically. I just fell in love with the whole concept. So I moved to London 3.5 years ago, and I'm just gonna give you a little bit of like examples of projects that I've worked on since I've been there. The first one is a project that I led with one of the main police forces in the UK, and what we did is we changed the leaflets that were sent out with fines to people that were caught speeding on camera, explaining the reasoning behind the speed limits, and we reduced reoffending by 20% in 6 months just with that small intervention. Working in the Ministry of Education in Peru and with the World Bank, we did a project where we sent principals an email where we were telling them about the social norms with regards to attendance, and we increased attendance of principals by 5 percentage points with just that email. And then working with the Ministry of Social Security in Mexico and with the Inter-American Development Bank, we did a project where we sent letters to employers, and we increased the number of employees registered in Social Security by 20% just by telling them that we knew they had those employees and they should register them. This is one project that is still ongoing. It's in Mexico, and the dots that you see there are actually health clinics all throughout the country. And what we're doing here is we're texting prenatal care advice to pregnant beneficiaries of Prospera, which is the conditional cash transfer program in Mexico. We have been doing this for 9 months. We're waiting for the babies to be born. We have messages up until the 40th day of the baby's life. And finally, I just wanted to tell you a bit of like where I'm taking this now and what I want to do further ahead and what I'm doing at Behavioral Insights team at the moment. So my two passions before Hertie and before behavioral sciences were peace building and violence prevention, as you've heard in all the introductions. And before I worked at a think tank in Colombia doing policy evaluations on conflict resolution. It's called Ideas for Peace. And then I also worked, I did an internship at the GIZ on crime prevention in South Africa, and I worked at the Anti-Corruption Center here with Alina, and I did my group thesis, which was wonderful, on anti-corruption. So it was kind of peace building and anti-corruption, the two main areas that I wanted to pursue. So I'm doing that now at BIT. I'm leading our work in anti-corruption, so we just finished a program of work in anti-corruption in Colombia, Argentina, and Mexico, and then now we're starting to see how we can support the Colombian government in the implementation of the peace accords. And the last one, I just wanted to finish with this one, because I finally met Mokus last year. And when we were heading to his meeting, he has an NGO in Colombia, and in this NGO, we've been in touch, trying to collaborate. But when we were heading there, he was not meant to be in that meeting. And I told my colleagues, if he's there, you're going to see me react like a teenager seeing a movie star, for sure. So he knocked halfway through the meeting, and my heart just started racing like crazy. I started shaking, and then he sat down next to me, and I just couldn't stop staring at him. I was like looking at him with my mouth open, basically, so didn't pay attention to the rest of the meeting. But then halfway through the meeting, I just stopped the meeting. I literally just went like, I'm so sorry, but I just have to say this. And then I turned around to him, and I just went, I just need you to know that the only reason I am where I am is because of you. And then he just went like this and gave me a massive hug. It was really nice. So yeah, that's me, and I'm looking forward to your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Our third presenter is Claudia Milna, founder of Female Finance Forum. Claudia graduated from the Hertie School with an MPP in 2012. She and I go far back. She worked for several years at the German central bank, the Deutsche Bundesbank, in the International Monetary Affairs Division, where she was responsible for green finance under the German G20 presidency. In 2017, she founded the Female Finance Forum, a community in which women learn about money management and financial products. Claudia.
Thank you, Sasha. And thanks for having me here. So, well, Sasha already said what I have been doing beforehand, and also briefly what I'm doing now. And I oftentimes get the question of, why did you leave your job? So I had a very stable and highly reputable job at the German central bank, working on a topic I was really passionate about, sustainability and finance. So that was basically political economy at its best. Why did I still leave? The reason is actually quite simple. I was not happy. So I was not happy where I was. To me personally, this ultimate security that the public sector offers felt more like a prison rather than like a safety net. And the thought of working there for the next 40 years actually terrified me. So, there's always two sides to each coin, and it just depends on how you look at it. But it was not my kind of coin. And in addition, what comes with this level of security is often a rather rigid system. And you know of hierarchies and bureaucracy in the public sector, but it is a difference knowing that those kind of systems exist and actually feeling how you are, you react to it personally. So I started thinking about what could come afterwards, and also what a good time would be to leave. And the timing was the end of the German G20 presidency, which was Germany had the presidency of the G20 in 2017. So I figured that the end of that year would be a good time for me to leave. The question was, what would I do afterwards, and how do I find that thing? Because I did not just want to leave the Bundesbank. I wanted to go somewhere. I didn't just want to have the push factor, but I wanted actually to go somewhere, to have a goal. So then I talked to different employers and thought about different options, but I constantly had this nagging voice in the back of my mind telling me to start something on my own. And I really wanted to have a more direct impact on people. So at the Bundesbank, we were looking at this system, the financial sector as a whole, which is super important, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic job and the institution is great and so on. But my personal impact was not very visible to me. So I developed like different ideas. I basically came up with an idea of an app for everything, totally unrelated to what I was doing at the Bundesbank or what I had ever been doing, really. I just wanted to create something and come up with an idea. And the only good strategy I had at that time was actually to talk to as many people as possible and as early as possible. So there's this quote saying, fail early, fail often. Just talk to people to find out, does this idea that I'm having in the back of my mind actually make any sense? And so after a few rounds of these different ideas that I had that were totally unrelated to anything I ever knew, I came back to the topic of green finance, which I was passionate about and which I actually knew something about. So it was my expertise, which is clever to rely on. And now I would like to ask you a few questions. And I'm going to ask, to say everybody who, and I would like to ask everybody who says yes to that, to just stand up briefly. So everybody who thinks that sustainability is an important topic, please stand up. Fantastic, thank you. That's why I love Hertie. Now, everybody who actively tries to incorporate sustainability in your daily lives, please stand up. Thank you. Everybody who integrates sustainability into your financial investment decisions, please stand up. Everybody who integrates sustainability into the financial decisions. So basically, the difference between everybody who was standing at the beginning and these people, that's my target group. So by talking to many people, I realized the issue about sustainable finance is not that people don't care about sustainability. It's that they don't have a connection and don't feel comfortable with the topic of finance. So now, last question. Every woman in this room who does not feel comfortable in managing your own money and financial decisions, please stand up. Everybody who does not feel comfortable?
I don't feel confident.
Or confident, yes.
As in having enough knowledge?
Yes, as in having enough knowledge. So this is the target group now in my female finance forum. So I'm targeting women because women have even lower, financial literacy in general in Germany is very low. But women have even lower levels and we have less money than men. In 2016, the average retirement benefit of women in Germany was 880 euros. So there is a need to do something on the side. So what exactly do I do in my female finance forum? I provide the basics of financial education. So I teach women in workshops what is a bond, what is a share, how does a fund actually work, what are concrete steps, what are the first steps to take when I want to invest, how can I invest, what can I invest in. So really very basic but very practical hands-on education. And I provide a platform of exchange, so real physical meetings, video conferences, and a closed Facebook group only for women, because it helps to discuss these things, not just alone, not sitting in front of your computer Googling, but talking to other people about this, to learn from their thoughts, to hear their questions, and to have a safe space where to ask questions. And I offer these workshops to employers and institutions. So for example, I gave a workshop here at the Hertie School, and I'm giving a workshop at the University of Frankfurt soon. And I target employers who want to position themselves as equal opportunity employers. Another question of how did I actually move from being in a safe job at the public sector to starting a startup? Which support did I have? So I kind of knew that I wanted to leave the Bundesbank, and I also had this idea of wanting to start financial literacy, so the Female Finance Forum. I sat down and thought about the worst case scenario. What's actually the worst that can happen? And what if this doesn't work? And I figured that even if the startup doesn't work, the worst thing that can happen is that I spend my few savings, which really is not that much. I lose that money, and I gain a ton of experience, and I'm still a highly educated woman in the financial sector. So actually, I'm going to find another job. The worst case scenario was not that scary. And then I thought about, okay, what do I need to make this happen? And what I needed was basically advice, because I had no idea how to start a business, a network in the startup field, and money, mainly to cover my living costs, because I'm providing services, so I don't need a large investor, but I do need to cover my living costs. So I received a stipend from the Social Impact Lab, which is a fantastic stipend for social businesses, where I got advice and a network. So they helped me out getting started, first steps to take. I still needed money, and that's why I still have a part-time job working at a university, just to cover my rent and my health insurance, that kind of stuff. But I am more flexible in that job in terms of time and location than I was at the Bundesbank. And the Social Impact Lab has been of incredible value for me by the expert advice that I received, by providing me a co-working space where I sit among other founders who all have the same needs and questions at the beginning, by also providing that space for me to have my workshops in. And by providing contact to newspapers and so on. So I'm going to be, for example, at the site online workshop in May. And this kind of support is what I think is the most important when you're thinking about starting a company, especially when you're alone. So yeah, that's what I would just advise everybody to look out for when thinking about that kind of thing. So I left the Bundesbank last year in September, and I was there recently just for lunch and a coffee. And one of the ex-colleagues just looked at me and he said, Claudia, you don't look that stressed out and starved as I would have expected from an entrepreneur. Actually, you look really happy.
Thank you, Claudia. Our final presenter is Gloria Jarrell, who graduated last year with an MPP. She is a partner and chief operating officer at Fatico. At Fatico, a startup that develops tech platforms to promote participation and freedom of speech, Gloria runs 3 apps disrupting the status quo. The first is a mobile app that allows citizens to report public service and infrastructure issues. The second is an app for citizens to report corruption in the judicial system. And the third is a crowdsourced database on the 21,000 candidates running in the 2018 Mexican elections.
Thanks, Sasha. I think, yeah, it's working. Okay, well, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks for Hertie to inviting me to present this. Well, this is a quick word cloud about my professional experience. And basically, my professional career developed around creating social media strategies for government and developing strategies for implementing OGP, that is the Open Government Partnership in Mexico, before coming to Hertie. So I had the chance to work with all these public servants, convincing them how technology would change their life, but in a better way, and how that was going to be useful for them. But last year, when I was finishing my program here at Hertie, even my perspective around social media and digital platforms changed completely. I realized during what I was doing in my thesis about fake news and what was going on with Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, etc., that the real problem was that this idea of viral distribution and the low cost of production was really damaging our societies and was a big, big issue that we were not addressing in a good way. So, and I think even the general awareness about the importance and the value of personal data totally changed. So while I was finishing and planning what I was going to do next, I started questioning what was going on in Latin America around these issues. Because here in Germany, it was super common to hear about it, on the US, etc. But in Latin America, the debate was not the same. So I spent the summer in Rio. It's not that I'm complaining. And I worked with a research institute there to identify how the Global South was responding to these issues and how in our very specific cultural context and very chaotic societies, we were adapting to technology. So I went back to Mexico with this question on my mind. How can we use technology in a region that is highly affected by corruption scandals, low trust in governmental institutions, and low participation of the youth population? And suddenly, when I was there, 1 month later, this happened. The earthquake that hit Mexico City on September 19, and that was like a wake-up call, not only for me, but I think for Mexican society. Because we realized how vulnerable we were, but at the same time we realized that if we organize ourselves and as a community, what was the impact that we could have? So the day, even on that night, people start going out, helping their neighbors, trying to find survivals among the rumbles. And on the next day, there was this massive network on social media trying to organize all the efforts and to coordinate all the food and clothes and stuff that was being collected to help the people that lost it all. So at that very moment, I said, well, maybe the problem are not the platforms, but the purposes. So if social media can really change and can really make us go out to the street to help our neighbor, that even sometimes we don't know who he is, but these big moments are like an opportunity to use technology for good. And under that context, I start co-leading Factico. This is a startup that creates platforms to promote citizen participation, and basically that tries to connect technology with communities. And we are promoting this idea of going out. It's not about using technology or complaining on social media. It's also about creating a stronger bonds among citizens and among especially young people. And to show them, because after this, there were tons of stories about how millennials were really apathetic, but after the earthquake, that changed. And that showed that my generation was able to connect and to have a huge impact, and that we could change our country. And that was the time for stop complaining about bad governance and about corruption, was the time to start doing something. And that on the elections context was massive, because we started these ideas, all these apps started as ideas, but our most ambitious project is Liga Politico. That is this crowdsourced database that compiles the profile of 21,000 candidates running for office. And the elections are this summer in July. And there are 18 million young people that are going to vote for the first time. So that's massive. And that's the only way in which we are going to be able to change who's in power and to influence what's happening in our country. So this platform has two aspects. The first one is this crowdsourced database and we collect all the experience from NGOs, academia, private actors, so they can complete the profiles of these people that are running for office, and that sometimes we don't even know. Because if you're lucky, you spend 2 hours Googling the names, and you can find a Twitter account and maybe an old media story about something, but that's it. But all the information is available. It's just that you have to access these super long and boring PDFs to read the profile or to read if they have any corruption scandal or how much money they are making. So it requires a lot of expertise and a lot of time. And citizens, they don't want to do that. They don't have time. They are sometimes not interested in digging that deeper into the profiles of these people. So that's the first part. And the other part of the project is this gamification idea. How do we engage with these 18 years old young people that are going to vote for the first time? They don't know anything about politics, and they are also tired of all these bad ideas and corrupt politicians. So through gamification, they can create the list of favorite candidates, and it's that the app, the website, forces them to check the profile of each candidate so they can go to the next level. So it's this idea of mixing technology and innovation to promote and to have a real impact in what's going on in a country like Mexico. So after all this journey, I can conclude that technology can benefit all sectors, but we have to oversight its development. It's not just technology for the sake of technology. The digital transformation is about people. And I'm really, really convinced that if we truly understand the intersection between data, technology, and policy, we can create like a better tomorrow, and we can really, really include everyone in this new era. So for me, this has been the only way in which we won't let anyone behind. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to all of you. Let's start off with now some of the Q&A. Claudia, Female Finance Forum was founded and is being managed solely by you. That's a big feat. I'm really curious if you could tell us some more about the support systems that you're tapping into to really make that happen. How have you been able to use your networks, maybe even the ones that you developed here while at the Hertie School, also at the Bundesbank? You mentioned also social impact, so I'm curious what specific services they're providing you.
So definitely, I think a network is an essential part for anybody's life, both, the private network and also the professional network. And to me, it's been really overwhelming how the networks have actually kind of supported me now, even without me aiming at that beforehand. Like while I was active, at the Hertie School as a student representative or as an alumni representative, I did not calculate on the school giving back to me, but actually they have given back to me, the school or the foundation, incredibly, just very supportive. And same with other networks that I've just been in, like alumni associations of previous schools or whatever. And so the Social Impact Lab has been fundamental in terms of their expert advice. They are a stipend system designed for, specifically targeted towards social entrepreneurs. So they've been helping me in really getting precise in terms of who is my target group, what is their pain point, what are they willing to pay for, who could be the ones paying for those pain points, and so on. Because only because somebody has a problem doesn't mean they are aware of that problem, let alone that they are willing to pay for somebody to help them with it, right? So those kind of questions, really bringing it down, making it more precise. And then, as I said, contact with other potential cooperating, other people that might be interested, newspapers, having interviews on different channels, that has been extremely helpful. And suddenly I'm in the position that people come to me and ask me whether I would be willing to hold a workshop at this site online festival that is happening in May, which is super exciting. And I don't know how that happened, actually. Or this other network that I was just able to hold a speech in front of 250 women who are who have their sole purpose is to help other women. So it's I don't know how they came to me actually, but one day I got an email saying, "Hey, you look interesting. Why don't we talk to each other?" And that's the kind of things where I realized that my topic is, it's kind of a hot topic right now. Like finance, people realize that it actually, has been neglected a lot in our society. Women is a topic at the moment. So I'm kind of just, riding on that wave. And I'm being extremely lucky with just being put into those different, onto those pages and then, going from there.
Farooq, in your case, with Politia, an investor actually came looking for someone to lead their new venture. I think that's something that a lot of startups dream of. So I'm really curious, how did this connection really come about, and what were his motivations for funding a social enterprise?
Yeah, I think maybe two stories. So after I left, I gave me a couple months of time. Let's say I was 2 months, I think, and I had a lot of talks to people. So I networked maybe 100 hours. And the 101th hour was then this meeting with him through a person, then talking about smart cities, and then it became a lunch about this venture idea, where a student team worked on that last year already. And then they were structuring a bit and then saying, okay, do you want to come on board? I said, yes, of course. And in the evening, we had the contract. That was it. And this is quite lucky, but I think like the 100 hours before made me, prepared me for that moment, because I was aware I want to do something with cities. I want to do something with data. And I had a concrete understanding of where I want to search for. And this helped, of course, to meet such people. But yeah, luck is also a playing point. But in the end, I mean, a broad network. So I think these occasions will increase in the future, because his generation, I think he's in his mid-40s, first generation of internet companies. So different mindset about investing, different mindset about how society can work, and more into impact. But it's not just that they don't want to found foundations to do just philanthropy, but to build businesses that solve a problem and can last financially by themselves. And this is what they're very excited about, and I think this type of investor will increase over the next years as those people do exits and think about, where do I invest in?
Gloria, with Lingua Politico, the crowdsourced database on candidates running in the 2018 Mexican elections, I think you were mentioning to me that yesterday you all had a really major event for this platform. And so I'm curious, how did that go first? Also, you're really coordinating there a massive amount of users, right? And so how do you manage all that? What are some of the biggest challenges that you have with managing such a huge user base?
I think the first challenge was to find the right partners. And after doing some research and talking with many people, we realized that a university was like the perfect ally. Because they have already a structure, they can organize the students, and actually they also, so we are working with Tecnológico de Monterrey, that is one of the biggest private universities in Mexico. And actually yesterday, we had this hackathon, where more or less 700 students uploaded information about the candidates to the platform. So from yesterday, it's like now ready and online. And basically what we manage is that they are uploading like the basic information about the candidates, stuff that you can find like easily, like the social media, the email, what they did before, that's it. But I think this hackathon also shows that how young people can get involved in these projects. They were super excited and they were super happy that we gave them the chance actually to do it by themselves. And it's not just they giving us the information, it's that they are being part of the project. And I think that's like the main lesson learned from us. If you involve the people, they are responsible of the things that they do. They feel they are part of the project and they really engage. So I think that's one of the biggest learnings that we had from the event yesterday. And also, like with our other partners, we are working with this university, but also we are working with some companies, and they are really worried about corruption. So I think it's this idea of finding the topics that are interest to the different sectors and trying to give them something back. So if they have this database, they're going to be able to know, okay, if this mayor wins, we're going to do business with him. But hey, wait a second, we have this profile and this story about how he was involved in this corruption scandal 10 years ago. So it's maybe like, hey, we don't want to do business with them, but at the same time, we can also ask for more transparency. So it's like giving each sector the things that they can benefit from. And I think that has been like a really useful way of adding more partners to the project.
Monica, kind of similar to Gloria, it sounds like you're working in ever-changing different contexts and policy areas. How do you kind of adapt yourself to that? How do you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I guess that question goes down a bit to like how we work too and like how our methodology works. And a very important part of what we do is making sure that because something works elsewhere, that doesn't mean it's going to work somewhere else. So exploring the context and having a very deep, qualitative phase in each project is very important to us. Also to make sure that we take into account like cultural sensitivities to it. So if I'm working in different contexts, then we try to make it so that we build the projects collaboratively. We work really closely with the governments. We work really closely with the third parties who are working with us as well, to make sure that we take into account their experience and their knowledge of the context, which we don't have. And I think that helps a lot. It is challenging because you're changing from maternal health to tax compliance to anti-corruption to peace building, and you go a bit crazy sometimes. But I guess it's adapting, and it's also about the methodology. Ultimately, we're going down to identifying first very specific behaviors that we want to encourage or discourage. And then once you've identified that behavior, then you go into the literature and you try and find out what's been found to work elsewhere and what the evidence has said, and then you devise an intervention that you test. So as long as you keep on doing those steps in the methodology, it helps adapt it to different policy areas as well.
Farooq, tell us a bit about your transition from working at a large, highly hierarchical political party to a small social startup. I mean, it must be like a totally different world.
Yeah, maybe I can explain how the morning looks if you enter the CDU. So, I mean, you have a box where you have like transparent colors of where letters are in, or for example, the task you should do. So red was a speech, and yellow was a letter that you should answer, and I think without color was just, for your information. And that was how the day started, and I think now it's Slack messages in the morning, and figuring out what to do, phoning with my phone instead of a fixed phone, having a laptop instead of a fixed computer. And everything is more flexible, everything is more challenging. Actually, I only know what I do in the next week, like really, I figure out that. And the horizon of what I would have done in the CDU was quite clear over the next 6 months, let's say. And this is basically the big difference. So the time horizon in a startup is quite short, and in large institutions, it's very planned, and you know what to do over a large time. Yeah.
Were you finding this adjustment easy, or I mean, are there challenges?
Yeah, it was easy. That was surprising. Yeah, because I wasn't comfortable with the prior organization, so I felt trapped there somehow. And in this, like for my age at least, let's say, I'm not saying I don't like this culture, but at this moment in time, it was not a fit for me. That's why I left. Mm-hmm. So I feel very comfortable with the working style now than before. Yeah.
Claudia, does this remind you of your work at the Bundesbank at all? Did you have transparent boxes?
I did not have transparent boxes, but it was very clear what was coming up. So I would totally agree with what you said. And I'm also finding it surprisingly easy. Also, like there's sometimes people who say, yeah, but if you don't know what you're going to do, how can you motivate yourself? And if there's, like no clear deadline for something, how can you motivate yourself, stuff like that. And I had this coach at the Social Impact Lab, which was one of the things that were really helpful. So I had a coach with whom I met on a regular basis, and he never asked me about whether I can motivate myself or whatever. He was rather like, okay, are you still getting enough sleep? And do you take breaks? Do you take weekends off? Do you manage to go on holidays every now and then? Because actually, this intrinsic motivation, it's really crazy how hot that can burn. And I mean, I think it's really rather a question of not burning out. Like just beforehand, Farooq asked me how I'm not having a heart attack. And I said, well, I'm trying to prevent that. It's not that easy. So but it's really just this, it's crazy, the difference of my motivation of getting up in the morning now compared to my previous job, even though I did like my job. Like, green finance at the Bundesbank was great. It was just the environment was not for me. And now it's the total opposite. And it was it came as a very natural adjustment to me as well. Yeah.
Monica, I was really interested in the behavioral science stuff too when I studied here. And so I'm just curious, what's kind of the most surprising or counterintuitive result that you've come across in your work with at the BIT?
There's one recently. So we did a trial in Guatemala where we were trying to encourage tax compliance, and we sent people letters, and we had variations of the letter. One letter included the social norm. So in Guatemala, 6 out of 10 people pay their taxes on time. And we also included a message on national pride. So be a good Guatemalan, pay your taxes on time. It worked. that's not the surprising bit. The surprising bit is that this was 4 years ago, and we checked the results again this year. And 4 years onwards, the effect remains for the social norm and for the national pride message. We had other messages, it only remains for those two. But I think it's incredible that you get a letter 4 years ago, and then your tax compliance is still higher 4 years after that. I think it's, yeah, these jobs sometimes you just go like, oh my God, I was not expecting that to work that well. Also makes you think a lot about what are we not getting right, and how many times we are influencing behaviors without really measuring and thinking about the impact that they're having. And then you might be sending a letter with a text and it's going to have an effect on someone's behavior for 4 years and you're not really taking into account. So yeah, I think that's a surprising one I can think of at the moment. Yeah.
Claudia, I have another question for you as well. I'm just really curious, you're now at this phase where you're trying to find employers to pay you for your services to run workshops. And what do you think will motivate those employers to want to hire you?
So, to me, the most surprising company who actually approached me before I even had the chance to, go out, have all my material set up and go out and talk to anybody, was Black & Decker, the drill company. I had never heard of them, so I Googled them and I was like, what the heck? Why, what do they want from me? And it turns out by talking to them that, well, surprisingly, they are not a very attractive employer for women. And they realized that, decided that they needed a strategy to be more attractive for women, and therefore set up a women's network and whatever. And in that context, they wanted to have a speech from me. And I think, so that is clearly a very important aspect, so being more attractive for women. I mean, we are about 50% of the workforce, and especially in times of, shortage of skilled labor, whether that's actually happening or not, but employers do need to position themselves as attractive employers, both for women and in general. Another aspect is that actually, in Germany, financial security is the second most important aspect for quality of life for people. So if that is somehow threatened, it immediately has implications for all our lives. So we get psychological problems, we get social problems, we get sick. And there are studies from the US who say that 1/3 of all employees are distracted at work because of private financial stress. So they have, it was a incredible number to me. So 30% of all employees spend on average, I think, 3 to 4 hours per week on thinking about their private money while at work. So, if you make the calculations, that's actually quite a lot of money that is going out the window because people are not properly prepared. I'm not sure how that translates to Germany, so I haven't found those similar studies for Germany, and every country has their own situation in terms of, student loans, for example, is a different story in the US than it is in Germany. But money is an incredibly important topic to us. So money cannot buy happiness, but having no money certainly leads to unhappiness. So it's kind of actually a very intuitive topic to think about, but somehow until now it's not really been employers have rather paid for yoga courses, which is also important. And now I'm saying continue your yoga courses and add the finance courses to it.
Gloria, I could, of course, ask this question earlier of any of the panelists, but you're the most recent Hertie School graduate. So I am curious how your studies prepared you for the work that you're currently doing, and you really kind of launched yourself into this very, very soon after graduating.
I think it was about timing, because when I went back to Mexico, it was this electoral year. So it was this challenge of, do I want to go back to work at government, but at the same time, I'm not really happy with this public administration thing anymore. So I think what I learned at Hertie that really helped me to start this project was this possibility of seeing the bigger picture, and to not only, sometimes I think in Latin America we tend to always see what the US is doing or what is happening in Europe, and I think after Hertie, I learned a lot about that, but at the same time, I really revalue what was going on in Latin America and the capacity that we have to set the agenda on some topics and even to adapt differently to different problems. So I think, yeah, it gave me like the possibility of seeing things from a different perspective when I realized that our region like really needed a lot of work, but at the same time that we also have a lot of potential and that sometimes we tend to not like remember that. So yeah, that was kind of my biggest learning of being here.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation completely, so now I would like to open the discussion further. If you have a question you'd like to ask one or more of the panelists, please raise your hand. We'll then bring a microphone around to you. Don't be shy. They're alumni just like you. And so, yes, I think one. If you could please tell us your name and also which panelist or panelists you're addressing.
Well, I'll just bring in my voice. It's Luis from the 2010 class. And some of you who actually work with technology, so to say, I think you have a platform, and you do too. Well, all of you kind of. How do you bridge that gap? I mean, did you know a lot about technology before you started? What do you do? Or I mean, because a lot of us are illiterate here when it comes to technology. So I was wondering, like, how you engage with a startup that is heavily involved in visual technology, or like the interface, and did you actually know something about it, or how do you learn it, or who do you rely for that? Because we were just discussing that for the last 3 days. How leaders interact with the digital technology.
Maybe Farooq and Gloria, you wanna?
So I thought I know that because I studied smart cities, and until I talk to developers, then you realize you know nothing. You have to rely on the people that know what technology is about and how to build that. And in our team is the developers, a developer right now. And the thinking is quite different. But what helps is that you can translate that to the customer. For example, in our case, it's talking to the cities because they also have IT departments, but sometimes, or quite often, these people are also not technology driven. They didn't have an IT background, but they have an administration background, and now have the task to be responsible for technology. So it really helps in the conversation at the forefront, but core product must be developed by the developers and also product people. I have a strong co-founder from the startup scene, which is quite a good match because I bring the political, or let's say public policy view, and she brings the startups scene experience. And she drives the product experience forward, which I also can provide. And this, if you have a very strong team doing that 3 dimensions, then you can succeed, or at least have higher chances. Yeah.
Well, I had some knowledge before. Even before I left Berlin, I had this coding training at the Mexican embassy that was super useful, but I was not like expecting to develop an app by myself, like no way, but at least it gave me like this basic understanding of how developers think, because it's a completely different way in which policymakers do. So, and that was really useful, especially to establishing like a good channel of communication with my technical team. That is always a challenge. And something that I really like about working so close with them is that they are challenging me all the time. They are asking me frequently, like, why? But why in that way and not this way? But it doesn't make any sense, like in a logical way. And it's like, no, because people are gonna understand better if you say this. Like, and I think that's very, you have like under this idea that we were discussing during the workshop the last days. I think being a digital leader is not about having digital skills or having this knowledge about coding. It's about being open to talk with different people or people with different backgrounds than yours. And this openness, it's the only way to establish like bridges and to like develop good projects. So yeah, that was.
3 was, yeah? Yeah, sorry.
My name is Nondokozo. My question is for Claudia. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned sustainability as part of your business model. So most of your, like when you talk to your clients, your female clients, about products and things like that, is it directed only on the topic mostly around sustainability, investment products, or is it just something, yeah, I just heard you mention that, so I wanted to understand how you do that.
Yeah. So initially, like my motivation was to provide financial literacy on sustainability, sustainable finance, and then I decided to kind of refocus and target women, and I realized that before, talking about sustainable finance, we need to talk about finance in general. So just explaining how does a fund actually work and so on, and then I kind of, especially in these finance circles that we have, these events where we just talk for an evening about money, the question comes up almost every time, and then I obviously explain what the implications are, what to look out for. I am planning a workshop specifically on sustainable investing. I haven't had that yet, but it's definitely something that's very dear to my heart. Yeah.
I'm Teresa. I graduated in 2017, and my question is for Gloria. Congratulations, first of all. It's always amazing to see someone of your classmates going on to change the world. You've mentioned already in your presentation fake news, and I would just be interested in understanding whether you have any kind of verification mechanism on your platform, because I imagine, especially with sort of like this big network of politics in Mexico, smear campaigns, all this is quite common. If I understand correctly. So how do you make sure that the information that is provided is actually accurate and balanced?
Yeah, actually one of the main purposes of the platform is that of the idea of fighting like fake news and misinformation around the candidates. And one way to solve the issue was like to develop this kind of diagram or table or manual for the organizations to verify the information with official records. So for example, they are not allowed to just upload or just use one story in the media about this scandal. So the organizations that are specialized on anti-corruption proposals are working with us, and they do all the research. So they ask, for example, we have this the Función Pública, that is like the office that deals with all the records of public servants, and they do the transparency or information requests. So they use that information and then they upload it to the platform. And also we are at this, we have these next months to do more alliances with people that is already working, or they already have the databases that are like super checked, and they are already like verified, so they can upload it to the platform. It's not like anyone can do it. We have like, the access is restricted, and also we have very like strict rules about what is the documents that you can use to kind of prove what you are saying or the data that you're using on the platform.
The fourth question was the gentleman in the back. He needs a microphone. Okay.
Well, I think one of the questions I wanted to ask was the question she highlighted. It was directed to Gloria. But having said that, let me first commend every one of you for your effort. I think it's noble, and it's actually interesting for me to see young people carrying out some such innovative ideas. Now, my question would be directly to everyone. Maybe you could just throw more insight at what's the next phase for you, for your various projects? Where do you see yourself going next with your various ideas? Thank you.
Sorry, could you say your name as well?
Sorry, my name is Kingsley.
Next steps.
Should I? Well, in my case, I guess is what I talked about at the end of the presentation, and it's trying to push the boundaries of where these types of approaches can be applied. And I think we've been applying behavioral insights in areas that we felt more comfortable in. So For instance, health appointments, attendance, compliance, tax compliance. But now we're trying to take it a step further and see if we can actually prevent recidivism, reduce violence, try and help, for instance, Colombia implement the peace accords, and also corruption. Corruption is a massive, massive challenge, and it's been a very, very big challenge for us as a program of work, mainly because we see corruption as such like entrenched big problem, and we've been trying to break it down into specific behaviors that we want to target. So I guess taking it to those areas where this has not been applied before, where there's very scarce evidence, and start building that evidence slowly in those areas is where I would see myself.
Someone else?
So for me, it's basically very concrete next steps is simply finding more employers, seeing whether they are actually willing to pay for that, more than just the incidental ones who have approached me now, but is that actually something that employers are interested in? And then the next step in a more medium-term approach would be to see how to scale up. So until now, I'm a one-woman show and doing most of it, really on a face-to-face basis, so holding workshops and so on. Are there ways how to have more webinars? Are there ways to develop an online course maybe? Do I want to grow a team? Do I want to have subsidiaries in different cities? All those questions, how to somehow get it a little off my person, like right now it's really just focused on me, and how to scale it up a little more independent from me. If you have any clever ideas, I'm grateful for suggestions.
Gloria?
For me, it would be like in the mid-term, like to turn this website into a permanent repository of information about politicians, because right now we don't have that. So it will be like now that they are in office, now we can follow up and start like pushing them to really comply and to really make them more accountable. And in the long term, the platform was developed to be applied in any country. So it's kind of a matryoshka that you can create new countries with new political positions, new municipalities, and our plan will be maybe to apply it in other countries in Latin America. I think that will be like, in the long term, a huge success and a very interesting experiment for us to go to other countries.
Farooq?
Yeah. Very short. Build the product short term. Midterm, get traction in Germany, and long-term, expand in Europe.
We had a question right here. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Moritz. I'm from the class of 2011, and I have a question for Farooq. Did you already talk to possible users of your software? And I would be interested in how do they demand the product on different levels? Who demands it? Is it the political leadership or is it the administration? Because I work in public administration too, and I sometimes get the feeling that people are pretty comfy in their silos and they don't want to be measured and they don't want all the data to be usable and connectable. I think it's a really great idea, so I would be interested in how do you get the people to, how do you get to create the demand for your product? Thanks.
Yeah, good question. We developed it from day one with the customers. So we talked to 10 cities around Berlin, and constantly, every week I go there, I have at least 3 to 4 meetings with them. We go with every feature and check it if it's worked for them, because it's easier if you want to ship food. You can imagine yourself as a customer. I want food and I want to order this, but it's very hard to imagine yourself as a mayor. So you have to talk to them a lot, and that's what we do. On the second part of your question, it's both. So political leadership has a totally different view on data than administration. But on the high leadership level, if you would say mayor, I would count political, city council is political, and then you have the department heads and the treasurer, which are administration. And they are more KPI-driven, highly number-driven. And I would say political leadership is more on topics and overview. And this is how the product will be structured in that sense. So mayor, overview view, administration, very detailed, like Kita page, for example, you saw, you can dive into that. And I don't know if the mayor would do that, probably if it's very urgent, but not on the monthly basis. And city council, again, a totally different topic. Yeah.
Yeah? Sorry.
Yeah, good. Then 2010, First of all, thank you very much. Very inspiring, and congrats for taking this step to actually create these projects. My question is, what is the legal framework of your organization, projects, whatever, at the moment? And where do you envision yourself in terms of where do you want to go? Is it like here you have foundations, all that? So basically, do you have a legal status, and where do you want to take it with your organization? That would be my question.
Maybe Farooq, you want to start? Yeah.
It's GmbH, so limited liability company. Yeah.
Claudia?
So I'm currently simply self-employed, Freiberufler, selbstständig, and I do think that it's gonna transform. Well, if it flies, it's gonna transform into probably a GmbH as well. But I'll take that step by step.
Factico in Mexico, it's a registered company with social purposes. It's called like a SAPI. I don't know how to translate it, but it's, I think, it's the, we have to reinvest the sum of our profits. And at this point, the business model is we're trying to develop that further. And because we have some funding from organizations and foundations, so I think also part of growing is this idea of how we're gonna make this a permanent business model and how we manage to do that.
Monica, I don't know if you want to say about BTI's.
I can tell you.
BIT's organization.
We are a mutual. It's called a private-public organization in the UK. It's partly owned by the UK government and partly owned by Nesta, which is a charity that works in innovation in public policy, and then a third is owned by the employees. So we have an employee trust.
Totally lost. I think. Okay. Yeah, then go ahead.
I'll go ahead. Okay. Each of you are obviously really ambitious, bright, curious individuals, and you've expressed some frustration about the systems in which you were previously working and how that wasn't the environments in which you wanted to work. I see that probably from the organizational perspective as a bit of a detriment, because you're the types of people that they would like to retain. How do you, what advice would you give back to your previous employers, or your current employer maybe, if they're seeking to retain you, to ensure that your type of personalities are used and can change the organizations from within? Because obviously there's a huge problem if you continue to leave.
Sorry.
I'm Jennifer. I'm from class of 2009.
Thank you. Who would like to?
So maybe I can, because I was actually just a few weeks ago sitting on a panel together with Professor Jutta Almendinger, who is chief of the Wissenschaftszentrum Berlin, and she has this great study on what kind of country do we want to live in, and they always ask their people, the interviewees, what do you think about that, a certain topic, what do you think others think about it, and what do you think how it's going to develop? And on that panel actually focused on the importance of work and the kind of work environment that young people seek. And they actually asked me exactly the same question. If the Bundesbank had wanted to retain you, what would have been needed? And I think something that came up in this discussion over and over again was that work as such plays a less important role in terms of people like us, or the salary plays a less important role, whereas the quality of work and the kind of having a sense to your, the intrinsic value, exactly. So having the impression that you are actually doing something important. And that doesn't only count to people like us. It's 85% of the population consider their jobs as being valuable. And certainly, to me personally, it's this wish to have impact and to have autonomy in my job. And I think the autonomy aspect is something that's really difficult to large organizations, from what I've seen. How to change that, I don't know.
Farooq?
I think what I saw as a big problem was that you have to wait for a long time to get to a position with responsibility. So this scheme of salary that is based on certain years, and then you go up and up and up and up and up, and after 20 years you're head of the department and have responsibility and can make an impact. I think, I don't know, this scares maybe people off to stay there, because you can't imagine yourself tied 20 years to that one organization. So I don't know, if I would have to give an advice, I would advise them that you can let people go into another sector, collect experience, and retain them back afterwards if they have the experience and maybe had responsibility and then can prove it in the large organization again. But just keeping streamlined all the way wouldn't work for the future.
Monica, I'm curious if your experience at BIT can inform some of this, because it was a startup 10 years ago, but now it's established kind of a global
I
powerhouse.
was thinking about, because we've done a lot of work in organizational psychology, and there's a lot of literature around what you can do to engage staff. Some of it is what they've been mentioning, which is like giving people ownership and making sure that they own their projects, that it has a purpose as well. But in terms of like the things that we do at BIT to make sure that like people are still motivated. So you can do anything from small incentives to like actually giving people like structural reforms of the organization. And I'll give you 2 examples. In small incentives, we have something called in-year bonus, where you get, when you have like outstanding performance, you get a small amount of money. Half of it you have to share with a colleague. And like the idea being that that incentivizes you to make connections at work. We do something that we call, it's a bit geeky, but we call them randomized coffee trials. And basically, we randomize the whole company every week so that you get assigned to someone and you have coffee with them every week. We have a 10-minute meeting on Mondays every week where we have something, also not great name, but it's called Whoops of the Week, where we celebrate like people's achievement, and we have Whoopsie of the Week as well, because we also want to celebrate failure. And then in terms of the organization is very flat to the level that our CEO doesn't have he has a desk this big, basically. Like everyone has the same desk, everyone's very similar. You cannot really see the hierarchy when you're working in a project. Like when I come into a meeting with someone else, people usually cannot tell who's the more senior person, mainly because of the interaction, because it's like everyone's equal, basically. And I guess that helps a lot too. And then the fact that you can see the impact of your work constantly, both because we're measuring it rigorously with the evidence, but also because you have a very strong explore phase where you go and interact with people. So for instance, next week I'm going to Guatemala and I'm working with the Ministry of Education there, and I'm going to be visiting schools, indigenous schools, and I'm going to be talking to the children, talking to the parents, talking to the school staff. And I think that's very motivating too. So if you can have that interaction, that helps a lot too. And then I guess in the literature, there are other ways that you can show, I can go on for ages on this. But in the literature, there are other ways that you can also motivate people by showing the impact of their work, but not necessarily bringing them out. So say, for instance, for people working in a call center giving scholarships for children in India, they found that it increased their performance massively and their engagement if they were to meet the person that they were doing the scholarship for, or just to hear their stories. Also, for instance, doctors, if you place a picture of the patient next to the exams, the results, the interpretation of the results are much more accurate when they can see a patient next to the exam. So there are little things that you can do to ensure that you improve performance through those like small modifications.
Super interesting. Yeah? Please?
Hi, Julia, 2014. Question to Farooq. So what have you seen in terms of cities actually using the data that they then have available? Because I imagine there wasn't really a lot out there before. And it's quite interesting, actually. I've seen this in my work as well now with numbers. Like, as soon as there's something out there, people latch onto it and kind of, interpret it in one way or another. And you sometimes have to be quite careful so that people actually understand what sits behind the number, because whole theories can be built on the basis of a number that, might or may not represent what people actually thought. So it's quite interesting to then also have the capabilities in cities and for people who work with this stuff to basically be presenting it in the way or using it in the way that perhaps should be.
Yeah. So there was 2 questions or 1 comment in the question. Okay. So how are cities using it? Yeah, currently what we saw was cities are using their data, but it's quite hard to them. So they have to it occupies your whole day to scrape it out, put it in Excel, and then monitor it. And if you want to do it real time, forget it. And that's basically our case. We want to say you don't need to put manual data into the system. It just automatically integrates into the process-oriented software. So all legacy systems we want to integrate with are built to process something. For example, register an inhabitant. But that you can use this for statistical purposes in a very real-time way wasn't done before. So that's what we are going to do. And this is, I think, the value. So they do it, they have the mindset. Even the KPIs we provide, these are KPIs we developed together with them. They are using it already, but not in the time frame that we can provide, and not in that automatic way that you can have an arrow, a red arrow that shows a comparison for the last month, for example, or budget. You have the budget, you spend budget in a way that the curve goes up end of the year, and if you want to project from the beginning of the year, it's not a linear projection, but this curve, right? And they can do it with Excel, and we do it. And that's how we do it, yeah, the value.
Yeah. Right there.
Hi there, Sharad from class of 2014. It's not a planted question. I just wanted to. I think one of the, you're all sort of working on things which improve decision making. You're bringing new information to light, or improving sort of evidence base of the decisions. What's assumed there is that the people who are making those decisions want that evidence to come to, there's a sort of assumed acceptance. Is that always the case? And how, because if you are disrupting something, there's got to be a bit of friction there, people who actually want to keep those silos in place as well. At what point does it get kind of a bit political in a sense? And, what are the kinds of threats that come with that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe Gloria first and then Farooq?
Yeah, for us, one of the main issues for this platform, Liga Politico, was that one of the things that we are publishing on the profiles of the candidates are how, if they have been at the Congress, how they vote in terms of gender equality, quotas at the Congress, and also legal abortion. So those topics, maybe at the cities they are okay, people, it's more open and more willing to, but at the local level, and especially at the municipalities, also, one of our organization is working on to see if they have any issue or any legal background on violence, gender violence. So of course that's dangerous for the people that is on the ground researching and asking, and they can start like turning on some flags. So we, through a very kind of delicate process about security, they send the information to other organizations that it's outside of that state. So someone with a different IPI and different security measures uploads the information. So at some point it's kind of anonymized. It's verified, but also we cannot say who's doing it, because that can put in danger that activist. And that's, in Mexico, that's a huge issue, like human rights and journalism and all that. So we had to also be aware that it was going to not to be great for everybody. And some people, I'm sure they're going to be really mad that we are trying to put all their profile online. And yeah, of course, we're aware of that, and we have to take some measurements, and especially in terms of security, and to protect the freedom of speech of the people that is helping us to gather all the info.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe to answer, so I see three groups with our case. So we have the early adopters that are pretty innovative in their thinking, small group. And then you have, on the other side, those who would like to hide everything, let's say also a small group. And there's a group in between, which would just follow a certain direction. And I think for us as a startup, it's very important to do a lot of things with the first group, the early adopters, to push this. So it becomes a movement that those undecided join it, and those that are really actively hindering it, blocking it, won't block it in the long run. Yeah. This is our strategy, but it's hard to measure these three groups. Yeah. We have to find out by trial and error.
Monica, would you like to say something to your fiancé about this?
I guess in our case, it takes a lot of convincing, especially convincing politicians and people in the public sector to run experiments. And something that helps, and I guess would be relevant as well for the type of work that you guys do, is quick wins. Just like something small, show it works, and have a compelling story behind it. And that helps convincing quite a bit. Also showing that it's not as hard as people think it is. So you say something like randomized control trial and people freak out a bit and go like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this ever. And then you go like, no, 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 it's literally just flicking a coin, don't worry. That's all you have to do. You just do it in Excel very quickly. You can do it in many ways. And once you do that, then people start coming on board. It takes a while, especially, for instance, in Latin America, we struggle with very senior people in government that have been working in the same role for 20 years and that just know how everything works and they don't want to do anything differently. And yeah, in those cases, it takes a bit of convincing and also taking into account like the political dynamics, I guess. But yeah, just a quick one and showing it works.
Yeah, please. To your left. Sorry, to your right, to my left. There's a microphone.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little jet-lagged still. My name is Martin. I'm MPP 2015. Initially, I wanted to ask it to all, but maybe in terms of time, I would like to just ask you. How has what you have learned at the Hertie School played a role in what you're doing now, and how has it helped you? But then also, how can the school better prepare the students? How can it maybe even not possible to prepare? For example, would you say that your first step to work for the Bundesbank was the right decision, or maybe if back then you had known more about what it actually means to work in such a bureaucracy, you would have not made that decision? It surely was helpful now, but just in terms of what the school can do to really guide us from the beginning, or guide the future students from the beginning to really know what they want to do and can do in the end.
So, I mean, you can always only connect the dots looking backwards, right? So in hindsight, I would say it was fantastic that I went to the Bundesbank and that I have the experience and the name. Like, you know, just saying I come from the Bundesbank actually does open quite a lot of doors. And it gave me the idea of what I'm doing now. So before going there, I did not know that the topic green finance actually exists. And now that's what I want to do. You know, that's I have no regrets about going there whatsoever. And that was certainly the Hertie School who made me go to the Bundesbank. So I always wanted to go into development cooperation, and then I did an internship there and figured, well, maybe no. And then I had a class by Mark Hallerberg on economic governance, or I don't remember the exact title. And I was just, you know, glued to his lip. No, wait, that sounds weird. So I was, I don't know how you say, I was, you know, just listening very intensely to what he was saying.
Entranced or something.
So he actually, you know, put the idea of going to a central bank into my mind.
Same here.
And what I think what the school could do better is to activate the critical thinking, this thinking out of the box. So I think the school shows good ways how to go into the public sector, how to go into a consultancy, how to go into academia maybe. And when you are already a curious mind, a critical thinker, when you're coming here, they support you in any way they can, and that's fantastic. They are, in my opinion, not that good in, you know, making people become that kind of curious, critical thinker, and they are not that good in showing alternative ways. So, like, you know, starting a startup is something that not many people do, just overall in society, and that could, like, I think more people, it could be an option for more people if we had more knowledge on that. So just giving, I don't know, like some kind of glimpses into other out-of-the-box opportunities that are out there to encourage this kind of curiosity that sometimes, you know, kind of, we just go in the path that is laid out in front of us, and showing that there are other, well, maybe no path, but there are other ways around.
We will take like one or two more questions. I know you have a microphone.
Yes, I'm Pauline. I'm from MPP 2016, and my question is actually related to Martin's comment. You have mentioned different elements that have propelled you to be able to disrupt and to innovate, and some of the things that you mentioned, the network, early adopters. But if there is of course, now the question is sustainability of your model and the things that you are doing. And I know that this is something that you have been thinking of like almost every day, if not every night, right? What would be those components and elements in the environment that you would want to change or you would want to be present so that your business or the things that you're doing, your projects would be more sustainable? And perhaps in this way also, we can also think of how can we contribute, because I think you're doing a really inspiring job in what you're doing, and what would that environment look like so that it's going to be more sustainable for you too?
Who would like to?
I think I can, like, for us as a civic tech startup, this business model, like, designing has been really difficult, because sometimes people, they don't think that it's like worth it, and it's okay, we all like freedom of speech, but how or why me as a company or as a government should invest on that? So I think that's challenging, and that's one of the things that we would like to change, that to showing with these type of projects, like the 3 platforms that we have, that we can really impact people's life and that we have an impact. And it's not about getting international funds or foundations giving money for this project, but to turn them into an issue that the private sector must invest on. So I think it's also, for us, that was also why we decided to go to the private sector. They are not giving us money right now. They are not funding the project, but just to invite them to be part of the project, for them to realize that this, like, opening up of information and having this platform for the profiles of the candidates was important, and that it was connected with them. And also something that was, for me, like, kind of really important was, in Mexico, you don't have many women, like, leading technology startups. It's always like a male-dominated scenario, and sometimes also it's like kind of this weird thing, because you don't. Some people might think like, well, maybe they are not very reliable. We don't want, if we want to invest money in that company, who's at the board, blah blah. But we are just like this 5 people team. But this idea of having more women, we are kind of balanced. We're no, actually, we are only 2 women, but this idea of becoming a more balanced company has always, it's useful because we are applying for more funds that are dedicated to women in technology. So also, like, this gender balance thing is a good thing, and I think people should be more aware of that too.
Anyone else want to say something?
I guess in my case is all about evidence, right? Like something I worry every day when I'm working in behavioral insights is, yes, you change this behavior now, but does that sustain through time? Is this actually something sustainable? And I guess the answer is you just have to carry on testing. And in my case, it's just, yeah, carry on doing small modifications, learn something, adapt again, test, learn, adapt, and so on. Yeah, I'm almost like a evidence-based policy-making preacher. Just go for it. But yeah, that would be my answer.
Any last question? Okay, then I'd like to thank you for your questions, and thank Farooq, Monica, Claudia, and Gloria. Thank you guys so much.